Good morning and welcome to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. I'm Bill Bryant. It's so good to have you with us. Later, State Senator Brandon Storm of Laurel County will be with us. We'll talk about the tornado recovery and legislative issues. That's coming later. But first, history is being made by the Kentucky Supreme Court. As the state's highest court, it is the court of last resort and the interpreter of Kentucky's laws. For the first time, most of the justices are women, and the new Chief Justice is the first woman to ever serve in that capacity. During her investiture, Chief Justice Debra Lambert talked about being a coal miner's daughter from Bell County. She has served at several levels of the judiciary, from family court judge to the state appeals court, before being elected to the Supreme Court in 2018. And Chief Justice Lambert is joining us here on Kentucky Newsmakers. Thank you for joining us. It's an honor to have you. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. I'm honored to be here.
I know it is rare, and it's not the easiest thing for a judge to do, to come on and do interviews. What does it mean to you to be making history as Kentucky's first female Chief Justice?
Well, I understand certainly that it is a note for history that I'm the first woman in Kentucky to serve in this way. But really, for those of us on the court, we just choose amongst ourselves, as the Constitution directs, whoever the Chief Justice is at the time. So gender really wasn't part of anybody's decision, I don't think. In fact, in my home, when my husband and I were talking about it, that never came up. So when the news came out that I was the first female Chief Justice, he was like, well, hey, that's a big deal. But for the rest of us, we're just busy showing up and doing our job and the work that we have been elected to do. And
as Chief Justice,
yes,
your role is primarily to do what?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of administrative work that goes along with being chief. Much of it I had no idea about. For instance, the judiciary is occupying 5.4 million square feet of office space in the form of courthouses and other office buildings. So you can imagine when the seasons change, particularly, and HVACs go on the blink, we have a very small staff of facilities folks who have to try to answer all those calls and work with local government, county judge executives and so forth, about making sure that there's a comfortable place for the citizens to do their court business.
So that comes to you. If there's I guess the flood in Frankfort, it had to be run by you that they go to an alternative facility for a time.
Yes, through the administrative office of the courts, that was handled. In fact, my chief of staff was one of the people who went to the courthouse and helped carry the files, many of the files from the basement upstairs.
As noted, the Supreme Court is majority female now for the first time. Yes. What does that change in terms of how the court operates or how decisions may be made? Do you think there is a different approach?
I've been asked that question about whether I can tell if there's a change in the way decisions are made, and I really can't. Perhaps there is, and it's just too subtle. But we did laugh and say that we were going to take over the men's restroom that was closest to the conference room, but for the fact that we're going to be vacating the Capitol in a few weeks, actually the middle of June, and we decided it wasn't worth buying the W and O vinyl letters that it would take to cause a takeover of the men's room.
Maybe when they move back in.
Maybe, yes.
Does your background, being from rural Kentucky, we noted literally a coal miner's daughter, influence the way you approach your cases, do you think?
I think so. I grew up very modestly. My dad was a coal miner actually as a child. He was from a very modest family, and he worked around the coal mines with his dad when he was a child, but he decided to become an auto body repair person. So he did that for a long time, and I'm a great spray painter, by the way. But yes, I do think it has influenced me, because that sense of the need for a level playing field, regardless of circumstances, regardless of educational level, economic level. I became a rule follower because, to me, I was taught that the rules are safety. And, you know, as a judge, we look for the boundaries. We look for the boundaries in statutes. We look for the boundaries in case law. And I'm a great rule follower. I enjoy that. It's a level playing field that I think everyone needs.
Do you prefer being a rule follower as opposed to a rule maker, which in the court sometimes you make the rules.
We certainly make some policies along the way, and we have the opportunity, perhaps it's almost forced upon us, but we have the opportunity to work, for instance, in the Kentucky Judicial Mental Health Commission is a across the board, across all stakeholders kind of organization that is working to try to improve the way the Kentucky judiciary interacts with people who have mental health issues, including substance use disorders and intellectual disabilities. So there is the opportunity to have a big influence, if you will, on how our policies are taken care of. But I leave the rulemaking primarily to the legislature.
Everything, Madam Chief Justice, these days is looked at through a political spectrum. It's a very divided time, as you know. How do you step back and make sure that you're not following a political agenda as a judge?
Well, that is foundational for judges to be nonpartisan. In Kentucky, we have 7 justices on the court who run from basically a congressional district size area, about 650,000, except for Jefferson County. But we all know that from the very beginning, and we all believe that it is very important to remain nonpartisan. In fact, I'll finish out my career as a justice, and I don't think I've been so nonpartisan all my life. I don't think I could ever be partisan. Like everybody, I get tired of the two sides fighting all the time, and it's a nice, comfortable place to be in the judiciary where politics just doesn't matter.
Do Kentuckians know enough about their judicial system? I mean, do you see it as a part of your role to educate Kentuckians about how the justice system works in our state?
I do think that's a small part of my role, and hopefully, since we are going to be out of the Capitol for some time, we'll be traveling around the state, and I hope that citizens will come and hear Supreme Court arguments in their area. We'll go to colleges and universities and community centers over the next few years, and we invite the public to come hear us, and students, of course, as well. I don't think the public knows enough about the judiciary, but it's not their fault. People are busy living their lives, and of course, as you know, civics isn't really focused on in our schools much anymore, not like it was when I was in high school in the 70s. And
is that a problem, though?
It can be, because I think sometimes people don't understand that the limitations that judges have when they're reviewing a case. I've spoken to some groups lately about the rule of law and how important it is for judges to follow the rule of law, even if they themselves disagree. I don't get to decide what the law is. That's the legislative branch's prerogative. I don't get to decide what regulations apply. So I do think that it can be a problem if the public doesn't understand what the role is of the judiciary. You know, there actually was a time in the 1800s, about 1820s, when there were 2 high courts in Kentucky because the legislature became dissatisfied with the high court at the time and decided to create a parallel high court.
the old court, new court controversy.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So, you know, today when we hear talk about expansion of the U.S. Supreme Court, and that seems so ridiculous, but, you know, it's one of those old adages, we have to pay attention to history or it repeats itself. So the old court, new court was around for, I think, 3 or 4 years, and it must have been a little bit chaotic. So.
Right. So if you instruct, and it is the rule that the judicial candidates really don't take tough political positions and reveal their partisanship, although many test that boundary. How difficult is it to run for office in Kentucky when, for a judge, when you can't tell people how you would rule on cases, you can't take those strident political positions? How does a potential judge or justice let voters know that they would give quality service?
Well, I think in terms of quality service from a judge, what people expect is an impartial judge, a judge that isn't influenced by politics. So it's quite fun to run for judicial office. Actually, you go to both Democrat and Republican events, and you attend parades. You do all the kinds of things that partisan office holders do, and those who are seeking those partisan offices. So it's really not a lot different, except that you don't have you're not the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate as such.
It's interesting we still do the prosecutors that way, though. It is partisan.
It is. And our clerks, our circuit clerks, are still partisan.
Do you consider that to be a little odd?
I do, but I think it goes back to, at least with the clerks, I'm not sure about the Commonwealth's attorneys and the county attorneys, but with the clerks, I think it goes back to the 50 years ago when the judicial article was changed and we became a unified court system. And I think that there was probably some give and take back and forth, as there often is with a major change like that. And I think they remained a partisan office.
What are the most difficult kinds of cases to rule on?
Well, there are lots of them. In fact, I've said recently that when I do eventually retire, I think I will just maybe have a taco truck or watch rom-com movies all the time. But of course, we have so many victims of crime in Kentucky. Terrible child abuse cases and deaths and tragedies. We don't see often the actual victims in our courtroom, but the cases and the lives of those Kentuckians, usually it's Kentuckians, sometimes of course it's out-of-state folks, but those victims come to us in the form of a case file, often in several bankers' boxes, often with lots of photos and exhibits. And the tragedies are difficult to deal with. And I very much appreciate all the work that our judges are doing across the state. State court is where it's at, after all. The U.S. Supreme Court has to be noted, but they consider 8,000 cases a year, and Kentucky courts consider 800,000 cases a year.
Wow.
So.
You were at one time a family court judge.
Yes.
Was that the most difficult position you ever held?
Yes, it was, but it also had so many rewarding features too, because I had the opportunity to give back to people who had helped me. My parents were very bright and very hardworking, but because of their limitations growing up, they didn't know how to encourage me necessarily to do things. And I had teachers who helped me, and I learned from an early age that all it takes is one adult encouraging a child, and anyone can do it, but I was just in the position at the time that I could be encouraging to children. So I loved working in middle schools and working on truancy prevention programs. Hopefully, as a part of the new policies that we're going to engage, I hope to create a truancy prevention program that if our judges wish to use that, they can go into their local middle schools and volunteer to prevent truancy.
The Supreme Court oversees all judges and attorneys in the state. Do you think we generally have a well-functioning system of justice here in the Commonwealth?
I think so, but we're always looking at it. We're always looking at the way we do, for instance, attorney discipline, judicial discipline. We shouldn't get into a position where we say, oh, this is the way it's always been done and it's working well. As things evolve, we are revealed that there's better ways to do things. So we look at those when they come to us, sometimes in the form of suggestions, or sometimes we're working on a case and we realize there's a deficit here in the due process or something needs to be changed.
You consider this the capstone of your career. I think you've mentioned the retirement and the taco truck after this. So But again, an honor to serve in this position, I'm sure, and you look forward to some years of service.
I do. I will be running again for another 8-year term here before long. So yes, I do look forward to that.
Chief Justice Lambert, thanks for coming. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Stay with us, everybody. We're coming back with State Senator Brandon Storm on Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. As we all know, the Laurel County area continues to deal with a tragic, deadly, and destructive tornado that hit earlier last month. Help came rushing in from across Kentucky and around the nation, and state lawmakers have pledged a sustained effort to rebuild and support folks there. State Senator Brandon Storm is a Republican from Laurel County, and he's joining us today on Kentucky Newsmakers. So this is your home, Senator, so you know it very well. First of all, how do you describe where things stand in Laurel County now after the disastrous tornado?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you for having me, and I want to send my condolences to everyone who perished in this awful incident. But I think the community's really come together, to be honest with you. I've seen people just out there, picking up debris. I've seen individuals that elderly out there doing that. So really the whole community's really come together, I think, and there's a bond. I told someone the other day, you can see photographs, you can see imagery on social media, but until you're there, you really can't comprehend the destruction and the magnitude of the destruction.
What was your personal experience on that night?
Sure. So my wife and I were actually in Denver. I was at a judicial conference where I'm the chair of judiciary. And so I was there, and my children, though, were at home. My in-laws were home at our house, and we watched it actually on the news. My wife and I did, moving across Somerset into Laurel County. So we called the kids, made sure we were in contact with them, and just said, make sure you're in the basement. And so, it was just so graphic listening to them, on the other end of the phone. And so, which is very traumatic. We immediately tried to book a flight back home, and I was able to get back the next evening. But we was sat in the airport for hours trying to get back home, and so very, very scared. You don't know what you're going to walk up to or what you're going to see. And then as we drove through the neighborhood that night, and when we got back, it was just destruction everywhere. It was really unbelievable.
Tell us through the numbers. You have some estimates, and it is just incredible the number of homes that are damaged or destroyed.
Yes, so right now the estimates appear to be 1,530 homes have sustained damage, and what happened was the Kentucky State Police did a flyover with a video, and it's amazing. I was able to watch that, but they flew over the path of the tornado, and then our PVA actually overlaid the property lines, and so you can see the road names pop up and the property lines pop up, and so 1,530 homes or properties were impacted. Of that, 280 homes were totally destroyed, 195 have major damage, 133 have minor damage, 134 were affected, and then there's another data entry where 75 were somehow impacted. Now, that's in the direct tornado path, and I would like to point out a lot of homes have residual effects. So we had debris in our yard. We had large metal from metal buildings in our neighborhood all throughout the area, and so there's another probably 713 homes that have had residual damage. And so it's just, again, something that's unprecedented in our area.
Senator, what are people to do in your area, particularly the ones who had their homes destroyed?
Yeah, so we have a lot of wonderful volunteers that have come in. We have a lot of professionals that have come in to try to help manage this and mitigate this. And so we have, I've tried to share it on my social media. If someone needs a home, obviously reach out to the professionals, but you're welcome to reach out to me. We have FEMA trailers that are being set up now. We have some wonderful people in our community who've actually stepped up and are paying for people's hotel rooms. We have other individuals who've stepped up, and they're helping those who didn't have insurance. And so I think the first thing to do is to file your insurance claim and then work with FEMA to determine if there's going to be any relief that either of those two entities can offer. And then we have people in our community that just stepped up and said if they can't be helped there, we'll help them ourselves.
Just anecdotally, as you've talked to people, do most seem to plan to want to go back and rebuild where they were?
I think so, yeah. You have people, especially in some of these subdivisions, that have been there for 20, 30 years, and so they want to go back to that area where they were from. And nothing like this had ever happened in those areas, to my knowledge. So it wasn't like something that's happened time and time and time again. This is just so out of the ordinary. Going from Somerset all the way through the National Forest into this area. And if you look at it, Laurel County on a map, and you look at the subdivisions, it's almost like it hit most of the subdivisions where there's a lot of houses. So it's very strange, but those people, that's where their home is, and they want to go back to that area.
You grew up there, went to South Laurel High School, so you have to have such mixed emotions in seeing the destruction and what has happened to your home area, but at the same time, it has to be inspiring how the people have come together, and then all of the help that's come from other areas.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The homes that I've seen destroyed, I go to church with those people. I've played in the yard with their kids in the past. My father's church was destroyed. My sister and brother-in-law go to church there. So again, it's very emotional when you see that area. I grew up at that church, went to that church as a child, and so it's very traumatic. But again, seeing the friends and seeing the people that have come in there, and the outpouring of love and support for our community, it's really amazing. I've had people from all over the country contact me, check on me and my family, get them all the time, the text messages and the phone calls. Do you need anything? Does your community need anything? And so we've really had a lot of people step up and fill those voids.
The legislature has put some limits on how a governor can respond to a disaster situation, and limits on what can be spent. Can he effectively manage this with the available resources, given that we have had several natural disasters this year?
Yeah, so I think last session we increased the governor's emergency funding to $100 million, and that is quite a bit. I don't know what the expenditures are that the governor's office has utilized at this point. And again, I think leadership and the governor and the General Assembly, we just need to sit down and come up with a conversation. I think conversations, communications, collaboration are the most important thing to do. And if the governor feels like there's more money that's necessary, then those conversations need to be had. If there's empirical data that he has that says, this is the expenditures that I've spent and I'm running out of money, again, those conversations need to be had. And so the General Assembly's always stepped up, in my experience, to help those folks in need. In Western Kentucky with the tornadoes, Eastern Kentucky with the flooding, and then if called upon, my colleagues and I will do everything we can to help our constituents.
There has been the promise that that from the Senate President that the legislature will see this through. Do you think a special session may be required, or can this wait until the regular session?
Well, I think if there are needs that can be articulated and can be supported by data, then I'll let the leadership and the governor discuss that. If the governor feels like we need to come back in for a special session, I know that my colleagues and I will do everything in our power to do our jobs for our constituents. But again, I think it's going to require conversations, transparency, and again, empirical data to say this is what the General Assembly allocated $100 million, and this is what we're down to. And if there's a need there, then I think the General Assembly will step up to the plate. But I just don't know those numbers, unfortunately.
You serve on the Banking and the Insurance Subcommittee there in the Senate. Will there be insurance issues to address after all these natural disasters?
Very possible. One of the issues that we did see in my hometown, and we've tried to address this in the past, is having some out-of-state folks show up in the wake of a tragedy. And there were some allegations, some rumors, and probably some verified allegations where individuals are trying to get homeowners whose livelihood, their homes or businesses, their cars had been totally destroyed, and they had tried to get them to sign documents to allow them to assign their benefits for their homeowners policies. And so Attorney General Coleman, I contacted him, and he stepped up, and he and I kind of did a joint press release about that, just trying to warn people, hey, watch out for bad actors. And so we don't want those people preying on our constituents. Those are my people, those are your people, those are our children, our grandparents, our parents. we want to protect them. So if we see that kind of activity going on, we are going to react. And we also had some looters that kind of came in and tried to take advantage of the situation. And so we also issued a stern warning to them that during an emergency, a natural disaster, penalties will be enhanced.
Do you foresee that maybe some legislation required to make some of those things automatic?
I think so, yes. If it's not already there, we need to tighten it up a little bit. I think it's there, but the people need to be made aware of those issues, just so that they know who to call in that moment. When 911 might not be the appropriate mechanism, but the Attorney General's office could be the appropriate mechanism. Get that out there more to the people and be more transparent and publicize that more to the people.
Less than a minute left. What do you want people to know about the state response to this situation, your willingness to help in the community, and where people can go for resources, or how other people can help who do not live in the area affected?
Sure, yeah. So we have two great places in London right now. We've got a downtown city area that's by the airport. Volunteers can come there to volunteer. Supplies can be dropped off there, or supplies can be picked up. We also have a county area that's out toward the state police post and the old Food City location, and that's where, same thing, people can come in and volunteer. They can drop off supplies, they can pick supplies up. But our community is resilient. We're going to rebuild, and we have great partners in the people of the Commonwealth and our citizens.
Senator Brandon Storm, we thank you for coming. Appreciate
Yes,
it very much. Stay with us. We'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. We do want to thank you for being with us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. Beginning next week, we'll start coverage of Campaign 2026. It's closer than you may think. And we appreciate you being with us for Kentucky Newsmakers. Stay with WKYT for all the latest, and you make it a good week ahead.